Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Conspiracy Nation Volume Number 2. I wasn't sure if I was dreaming when I bounced on over to Zero Hedge this morning and found an article there. I'm going to go ahead and read this whole article to you. It's called Circus Clowns and Sideshow Freaks. If you remember, I described this weekend's events as kabuki theater and a puppet show, so I was almost kind of wondering if I was dreaming. It's like waking up with night sweats and not sure if you're in a nightmare or not. Well, we're in this nightmare, so I guess I'll call this a morning story, time for waking up. I'm going to go ahead and read the whole thing because it's such a valuable essay, and I know how much a lot of you like me to read to you, so I'm going to go ahead and read this whole thing for Volume 2 of Conspiracy Nation. Circus Clowns and Sideshow Freaks. In my worst nightmares, when the lights are swallowed by the smog of some nefarious gloom and the air itself becomes a stale sarcophagus into which I'm entombed, and the grim hands of putrefied fate sink their wretched grip in the thick of my neck, and all seems irrevocably lost, I merely recall that soon I will awaken to the horror of a terminal America, infested by career criminals and certifiable morons. And suddenly, my off-color dreams don't seem so bad. Ultimately, there is nothing worse to me than a public majority that takes everything they hear from the mouths of political warlocks at face value. Even the fear of death is truly a pittance compared to the threat of being enveloped by a stampeding herd of frightened, stupid, human cattle. Is this melodramatic? No, not at all. When a man is aware, and by aware I mean honest with himself, he inevitably suffers the pain of being certain, while the rest of the world enjoys the bliss of false assumptions. We live in a culture that inflicts great punishment on those who know, and lavishes enticing but short-lived rewards on those who ignore. In such a place as this, meaning disappears, and countries die. The first-century satirist Decimus Juvenalis, grief-stricken by the destruction of the Roman Republic at the hands of a succession of emperors and tyrants, wrote, "The people that once bestowed commands, consulships, legions, and all else, now meddle no more and long eagerly for just two things, bread and circuses." At that time, the autocratic rulers of the empire were highly visible, even celebrities. They played the hollow Roman Senate like a pipe organ and created elaborate events, moments of pageantry in the otherwise terrifyingly bleak lives of the citizenry, and of course the people were thoroughly distracted while their economy, their government, and their land crumbled around them. Today our autocratic rulers in the form of corporate oligarchy keep rather hidden from the prying eyes of the commoners, but they wield the same power as the emperors of old, with the same obvious result. America is ripping apart at the seams. Our currency has been destroyed. Our treasury is indebted beyond the point of any return. The cost of our daily survival is quickly rising beyond any average person's means to pay, and our political system is a never-ending parade of googly-eyed muppets singing and dancing to the tune of the false left-right paradigm. Yet where has our attention been lately? Apparently, our impending doom is not as entertaining as the Osama bin Laden show, which has been written and choreographed like a bad Tom Clancy novel or a contrived episode of 24. Jack Bauer finally shoots bin Laden square in the head with his Hawkeye-like vision and badass marksmanship, while Osama, in typical TV Land fashion, uses a woman as a human shield. Sorry to spoil the ending for you if you haven't seen the final episode yet. Or how about the Battle of Wits? I say this knowing full well the irony between Barack Obama and Donald Trump, two soulless rock'em sock'em robots in a fake duel for fake polls, fake votes, and a fake presidency. Let's not forget about the royal wedding, the eagerly awaited international event that featured a throng of throwbacks from the Dark Ages prancing around in nutcracker outfits and partying to the tune of millions in British taxpayer dollars. Do any of these things really matter? Not in the slightest. How long must we endure this hokey carnival ride before we finally start focusing on legitimate, important issues? That's really up to us. Day after day, we allow ourselves to be conned, befuddled, and frightened by a cast of clowns and freaks. Why do we do this? How can we stop the madness? First, we have to understand how the propaganda works before we can diffuse it. Let's examine some of the tactics of the disinformation being used today, as well as the purpose behind some of America's most prominent distractions. The boogeyman is under your bed. A collapsing dollar, state funding on the brink, a still irradiated Japan, gasoline price spikes, and the only thing that has lately been able to draw people outside of their television and microwave fajita-saturated cocoons is the orchestrated hoax of Osama bin Laden's death. No independently corroborated physical evidence, no independently corroborated video, body dumped at sea in less than a day without independent verification of the identity, apparently to avoid his rising from the grave as the invincible zombie bin Laden. No problem. We fully believe every word the Obama administration says without question. Let's go do keg stands on the White House lawn. Yeehaw. A boogeyman is a very powerful tool for corrupt governments. In fact, every despotic regime in history has concocted one fantasy villain after another in order to maintain their psychological stranglehold on the populace. Killing one only means a replacement is soon to be introduced. While many Americans are intelligent enough to at least express some concerns about the obviously deceitful manner in which the bin Laden death has been handled and promoted, there's still a significant swath of the population that has invested themselves so completely in the bin Laden myth that they will support the official story without question. Sadly, villains often become the drivers of history. Most events on the human timeline are merely reactionary movements of states and peoples to counter a dangerous antagonist, whether actual or fabricated. Very rarely do people act in concert to change the shape of their society or their surroundings without a symbolic devil to spur them on. This is not to say that there are not real ghouls to be dealt with in every generation, but problems surface when we become addicted to the idea of villains. We become so lethargic when it comes to putting in the effort of determining our own destinies that we soon start to need monsters to inspire us to take action in life. We welcome governments to conjure enemies for us because it makes us feel as though we have purpose again, as though we are a team. Just look at the deluded lemmings that roam D.C. enthralled at the unconfirmed and unsupported claim of bin Laden's death. A civilization caught in this circle of pure reaction usually devolves into something utterly pathetic, a people without principles feeding on each other for comfort. Interestingly, the fermentation of amoral or destructive behavior is found most often in power structures like governments and corporate institutions, where the desire for overt control can be satisfied. It is at the top of the pyramid that we find the bottom of the barrel in terms of humanity. So it's not strange at all to consider the fact that elitists seek to create monsters out of thin air, like the Axis of